The Philippine Army is the main, oldest and largest branch of the armed forces of the Philippines, responsible for ground warfare. Commanding General Lieutenant General Eduardo Año, a former Chief of Intelligence Service of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, assumed office on 15 July 2015, replacing Lieutenant General Hernando Iriberri, the new Chief of Staff, Armed Forces of the Philippines. Its main headquarters is located at Fort Bonifacio. History: Philippine-American War. During the final years of the Philippine-American War, with the notable successes by the all-Filipino Makar Baby Scouts Cavalry Squadron under U.S. command against the Philippine Revolutionary Army, the American President Theodore Roosevelt officially sanctioned the raising of the Philippine Scouts as part of the United States Army, with full effect starting from October 1901. Earlier, in August that same year, came the colonial civil government's decision to found the Philippine Constabulary as the National Gendarmerie Force for law enforcement. Both of these organizations and the victories over the PRA contributed to the official end of the conflict in 1902, even as resistance continued through 1914. Starting in 1910, Filipino personnel in the Philippine Scouts were sent to the United States Military Academy, with one PS soldier being sent per year. Several of these graduates who served with the Scouts, plus PC officers, both formed part of the 1st Officer Corps of the revitalized Philippine Army established in 1935. Commonwealth period. The Philippine Army of today was initially organized under the National Defense Act of 1935 that formally created the Armed Forces of the Philippines. The act specified that insofar as may be practicable, original appointments by the President in grades above 3rd Lieutenant should be made from among former holders of reserve commissions in the United States Army, from among former officers of the Philippine Scouts and Constabulary. After the establishment of the Philippine Commonwealth on November 15, 1935, President Manuel L. Quezon sought the services of General Douglas MacArthur to evolve a national defense plan. The official rebirth of the Philippine Army occurred with the passage of Commonwealth Act No. 1, approved on December 21, 1935, which affected the organization of a Council of National Defense and of the Army of the Philippines. The act set forth the organizational structure of the Army in some detail, set forth enlistment procedures, and established mobilization procedures. With this act, the AFP was officially established. The development of the new Philippine Army was slow. The year 1936 was devoted to the building of camps, organization of cadres, and the special training of instructors, drawn largely from the Constabulary, which joined the new force as a Constabulary division. The commander of the Philippine Department provided Philippine Scouts as instructors and detailed U.S. Army officers to assist in the inspection, instruction, and administration of the program. By the end of the year, instructors had been trained and camps established. The first group of 20,000 men was called up on January 1, 1937, and by the end of 1939 there were 4,800 officers and 104,000 men in the reserves. Infantry training was given at camps scattered throughout the Philippines. Field artillery training was concentrated in the vicinity of the U.S. Army's Fort Stotzenburg near Angeles, about 50 miles north of Manila, and specialized training was given at Fort William McKinley just south of Manila. Coast artillery instruction was carried on at Fort Stotzenburg and at Grande Island in Subic Bay by personnel supplied largely by the American Commander et Corregidor. A decade later, with the threat of war with Japan becoming imminent, on July 26, 1941 a new Command in the Far East was created, known as the United States Army Forces Far East under the command of General Douglas MacArthur. On the same date, U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt issued a presidential order which called the Philippine Army into the service of the armed forces of the United States. The presidential order did not order all the military forces of the Philippine government into the service of the United States Armed Forces. Only those units and personnel indicated in orders issued by a general officer of the United States Army were mobilized and made an integral part of the United States Army Forces Far East, and only those members of a unit who physically reported for duty were inducted, with an annual appropriation of 16 million pesos. The mobilized units trained new Filipino members in defending the nation and protecting its people. World War II. Japanese forces invaded the Philippines after the bombing of Pearl Harbor on the island of Oahu on 7 December 1941. At this time, 2 regular and 10 reserve divisions of the Philippine Army undertook the defense of the Philippines. This included North Luzon Force. South Luzon Force activated 13 December 1941 under Brig. Gen. George M. Parker, Jr. The Visayan Mindanao Force under Colonel W.F. Sharp in the Southern Islands, and the Reserve Force. North Luzon Force included the 11th, 21st, and 31st Divisions, all reserve. South Luzon Force include the 1st Division and the 41st, 51st, and 71st Divisions. These divisions were incorporated into the United States Army Forces in the Far East. The equipment of these units included Renault FD tank, 75 mm SPM, Bren gun carrier, cannon, a 155 mm GPF, cannon, and a 155C model 1917 Schneider, 75 mm gun M1917, 2.95-inch QF mountain gun, 3-inch gun, 6-pounder naval gun, Stokes mortar, Brandt MLE 27/31, cannon, infantry de 37 model 1916 TRP M2 Browning machine gun M1917, Browning machine gun M1919, Browning machine gun M1918, Browning automatic rifle M1917, Enfield rifle M1903, Springfield rifle, Thompson submachine gun, and the M1911 pistol. After the surrender of the Filipino and American forces in the Philippines in May 1942, independent guerrilla groups, composed of both civilian and military personnel, began to form throughout the islands. Many of these groups worked under the control of General Douglas MacArthur's General Headquarters, Southwest Pacific Area. The Allied liberation of the Philippines began on October 17, 1944, when American liberation forces supported by guerrilla forces fought the Japanese Imperial Force. The U.S. military forces landed at Red Beach in Palo, Leyte on October 20, 1944. President Sergio Osmeña and Major General Basilio J. Valdez ordered the re-establishment of the Army, the general headquarters of the Philippine Army and the United States Army Forces in the Far East moved to Tacloban, Leyte on October 23. From October 17 to September 2, 1944, local Philippine constabulary troops, guerrilla units and the American Liberation Forces fought Imperial Japanese and Kempite troops which were supported by the Bureau of Constabulary and Makapili militia. After the restoration of the Commonwealth of the Philippines on October 20, 1944, President Sergio Osmeña, the government, military officials and cabinet returned from exile in the United States. Post-war period. Service of the Philippine Army as part of the United States Army terminated as of midnight June 30, 1946, by authority of General Order No. 168, Army Forces Western Pacific. The next day, on July 1, President Manuel Roxas issued Executive Order No. 94s. 1947, which, among other things, reorganized the Philippine Army into a service branch of what was now called the Armed Forces of the Philippines. This resulted in the formation of the Philippine Air Force and reformation of the Philippine Navy as separate organizations after long years as part of the Philippine Army. 1950 would see the new army not just fighting communist groups in Luzon but from August of that year, even the Korean People's Army and their allies in the People's Liberation Army in the Korean War as PA battalion combat teams forming the bulk of the Philippine Expeditionary Forces to Korea formed part of the UN forces, led by the U.S. that fought in the conflict. The decades saw the raising of the 1st Active Division of the Army, the 1st Infantry Division. With the victory of the Huks later in the 50s, the BCTs became active duty infantry battalions. Formed in the same time was the 1st Scout Ranger Regiment, and in 1962 the PA raised its Airborne and Special Forces formation. The Special Forces Regiment, following the traditions of the U.S. Army Special Forces and the 11th Airborne Division that helped liberate southern Luzon and Manila at the closing stages of the Japanese occupation of the country. It would only take until the 1970s and the communist and Muslim rebellions that would force the PA into the establishment of its 2nd Infantry Division, which led to the raising of more infantry divisions all over the country, as well as the formal raising of the Army's Special Operations Command and what is now today the Mechanized Infantry Division. Functions. The functions of the Philippine Army are: organize, train and equip Army forces for the conduct of prompt and sustained combat operations on land, prepare such units as may be necessary for the effective prosecution of national defense plans and programs and armed forces mission, including the expansion of the peacetime Army component to meet any emergency, develop, in accordance with the other major services, tactics, techniques and equipment of interest to the Army on field operations, train, organize and equip all Army Reserve units and perform such functions as the higher authorities may direct. Regular units. The Philippine Army has several regular units dedicated to counter-insurgency and conventional Army operations. Infantry 1st Infantry Division, 2nd Infantry Division, 3rd Infantry Division, 4th Infantry Division, 5th Infantry Division, 6th Infantry Division, 7th Infantry Division, 8th Infantry Division, 9th Infantry Division, 10th Infantry Division. Armor and Cavalry Mechanized Infantry Division, Combat Support Units 51st Engineering Brigade, PA, 52nd Engineering Brigade, PA, 53rd Engineering Brigade, PA, Army Signal Regiment, Army Artillery Regiment, Civil Military Operations Group, Intelligence Security Group, Service Support Units, Army Reserve Command, Training and Doctrine Command, Training Command. Philippine Army, established 1986, was reorganized as TRADOC effective March 1, 1995. Army Support Command, Finance Center, Philippine Army Band, Philippine Army Nurse Corps, Philippine Army Medical Corps, Philippine Army Security and Escort Battalion. Special Units. The Philippine Army has a number of units dedicated to special operations. These units report directly to the Philippine Army Special Operations Command. 1st Scout Ranger Regiment, 1st Special Forces Regiment, Light Reaction Regiment. Bases. The list of all military bases in the Philippines. Major equipment. The Philippine Army makes use of different kinds of equipment in its arsenal, like pistols, submachine guns, shotguns, assault rifles, sniper rifles, machine guns, grenades, grenade launchers, mortars, anti-tank weapons, night vision devices, force protection equipments, combat radios, armored personnel carriers, infantry fighting vehicles, utility vehicles, field ambulances, howitzers, surveillance aircraft and assault boats. In its initial period in 1935 to 41, the Army had pistols, rifles, assault rifles, submachine guns, machine guns, sniper rifles, anti-tank weapons, flamethrowers, grenades, mortars, knives, bayonets, artillery, and howitzers. Future acquisitions. Combat vehicles, armored personnel carrier. The Philippine Army is expecting delivery of 114 M113A2 armored personnel carriers from the ex-U.S. Army stocks, which are expected to arrive before the end of 2015. These are part of an earlier request by the Philippine government which was approved by the DSCA in 2012. Another batch of 28 M113A2, which includes 14 units to be armed with 76mm turrets taken from decommissioned FV-101 Scorpion tanks and fitted with modern fire control and thermal imaging equipment. 10 M113A2 with a remote-controlled weapons system, and 4 armored recovery vehicles. These modifications will be made by Israeli company Elbit Systems Land and Sea 4I before delivery of the first batch of 18 units will be on June, while the second batch of 10 units will be on July in 2015. Small arms and light weapons, rifles and handguns. A joint purchase with the Philippine Marine Corps for around 50,000 new rifles based on M16, M4, R15 platform and 5,500 close combat optics is underway, to replace the older M16A1 still in service on both armed forces branches. On May 4, 2013, the Department of National Defense has declared the United States-based Remington Company the winning bidder to supply 50,629 pieces of M4 rifles, according to the Philippine representative of the company. On December 2, 2013, Remington announced that it has been awarded a $47 million initial contract to supply and deliver R4 carbines with accessories and training by the AFP. On the 18th of March 2014, the Philippine Army confirmed the purchase of 63,000 new-built M4 carbines for 2.4 billion pesos, with the rifles costing 38,402 pesos each. The M4s are part of an effort to replace the Army's Vietnam-era automatic rifles. July 2014, deliveries have begun. On December 2015, the delivery of M4 rifles was completed. Rocket-propelled grenades. In January 2014, the Philippine Army ordered 400 Airtronic RPG-7s from the United States to replace their obsolete M18 and M67 recoilless rifles. The Airtronic RPG-7 is 60% lighter than the recoilless rifles, and deliveries are to be completed by the end of the year. Heavy weapons. Artillery. A previous requirement for 100 units of 81mm mortar, 335 units of rocket launchers, light anti-tank weapons, 18 units 155mm towed howitzers with 5-ton truck prime movers was announced in 2008. plus night fighting systems. The Serbian-made M69B 81mm mortar was selected for the mortar requirement, which were completely delivered in 2013, while the 155mm towed howitzers requirements were revised. The acquisition for shoulder-fired rocket launchers and night fighting systems are still in process. A plan to acquire 100 M113 derived VCC-1 APCs and 25 FH-70 155mm howitzers from Italy as part of a deal for further purchase of Italian armaments was announced in November 2012. The FH-70 were supposed to fill in the 155mm towed howitzer requirement announced as early as 2008. But this plan was cancelled as the package to acquire used Italian arms did not materialize. In December 2013, an announcement for public bidding to purchase 700 million pesos worth of howitzers and ammunition was made. This is to replace FH-70s included in the cancelled Italian arms package deal. The acquisition consists of 12 units of 155mm towed howitzer and 240 rounds of 155mm high-explosive ammunition rounds with an approved budget of 438.6 million pesos. The other project, which has a budget of 303.8 million pesos, is for acquisition of 5,990 NOs of 25mm rounds, 43,578 NOs of 40mm rounds, and 4,500 NOs of 105mm howitzer ammunition and other explosives. The Department of National Defense opened the bidding for 12 units of 155mm howitzers and 240 rounds of projectiles worth of 438.6 million pesos. The acquisition will boost the existing howitzers in its inventory but were outdated. On the 1st of April 2014, Israeli company Elbit Systems won the bid and will deliver 12 Sultan Athos towed artillery pieces. Missile systems. Shore-to-ship missiles. The DND plans to acquire a shore-based missile system with a budget of 6.5 billion pesos that will be placed under the control and supervision of the Army. It will consist of 12 launchers with its attendant trailers and tracking systems plus the missiles themselves. These shore-to-ship missiles could be fired to hit naval or other sea-based targets. Surface-to-air missiles. The DND has shown interest to purchase of surface-to-air missiles from Israel for the Philippine Army. Offers were made by Israel-based companies Rafael Advanced Defense Systems Limited and Israel Military Industries Limited. The DND has also shown interest to acquire the Hawk 5 variant of Raytheon Corporation's MIM-23 Hawk SAM system to complement and protect the shore-to-ship launches. The government also intends to acquire miscellaneous unmanned aerial vehicle. The Philippine Army has allotted 1.5 million pesos for its development of its third unmanned aerial vehicle. The UAV will be an enhanced version of the Philippine Army's first two drones, the Raptor and the Night Falcon. Engineering equipment. It was reported that the Philippine Army is planning to acquire 530 million pesos worth of disaster response equipment that includes 6 units of road rollers, 30 units of dump trucks, 14 units of excavators, 8 units of road graders, and 12 units of dozers. Force protection equipment. Another joint purchase with the Philippine Marine Corps is for around 44,000 new body armor force protection equipment composed of basic vest, plate inserts and soft ballistic panel and weighing between 5.8 kilograms to 6.8 kilograms.